I've never flipped a house, and if you've listened to this show for a while, you've probably heard me say that I will never flip a house. But it turned out that wasn't true, because now I am flipping a house, and I'm doing it with the guy who literally wrote the book on house flipping, James Dainard. Today, James is joining me on the podcast to talk about our new flip project in Seattle, why I've decided now is the time to try this strategy I swore I would never do, and how lots of you listening to the show can replicate our partnership and become a flipper, even if heavy rehab projects seem super intimidating to you. So James, thanks for being here, man.
I'm excited, and I get to walk you through your first flip.
I feel like this is your dream. You genuinely just love teaching people how to flip, and I really want to learn. So I feel like this is going to be a great partnership for us.
Oh, and I love when I teach a long-term hold and a passive investor how to flip, because they're like, why was I hating on this for so many years?
I feel like I'm going to have that revelation at the end of this. But actually, I should explain that we kind of already tease this out just to set this up. Like, James and I co-host, work together on the On the Market podcast. And on that show, we sort of did a bet earlier this year on who would have a more profitable flip, Henry Washington or James. And Kathy Fecky bet on Henry. I bet on James. I wound up investing in that deal a little bit. Ashley Kerr from the Rookie Show got in on it. It was kind of this fun thing that we did. And James hit it out of the park. It was this massive success. And so it got me a little bit more interested in doing it again, because I saw that I could be relatively passive. And yes, I'm taking on risk, but I could get in on the big substantial upside of flipping, even though I'm not great at construction and value add isn't my bread and butter. And so that's sort of the context for this. And then a few weeks ago, I told James I was kind of interested in it. I got this text from him in the middle of the night being like, hey, I found a property for us to partner together and flip on. And he sends me this video. I'm actually just going to play some of the audio and play the clip for you because it's really funny.
All right, Dave, I'm late night creeping for you. I think this house is a winner. I'm going to lock it down because I think it's a buy no matter what. But looks like there's 2 beds, main floor, bathroom, living, kitchen, eating nook off there. But we got 2,500 square feet. This thing should be worth 1.5 million. Good street. Will probably be 250, 300, depending on how nice you want to do it. If you want to build to the comps, you're probably 250. All right, so up here, we got 2 beds and a bath. And then you got a basement. Going in the basement. Creepy, creepy. This is what I do for you, Dave. Oh, not that creepy. There's lights on. And then we got space down here. Oh, dude, this is a winner. That is Pro Bash Shops. There you go. Good ceiling height. Yeah, this is a buy. I'm going to lock it down. We can talk about it later.
All right, so you heard James's opinion of this property, but since everyone obviously couldn't see the whole thing or saw everything you saw, tell us a little bit, James, about this property, how you sourced it, where it is, all that.
Well, and that is the thing, you guys. Time kills deals. I got a phone call on this at 7 o'clock at night. And I was not ready to go, and I dropped what I was doing. I bolted out there. It was dark. It was creepy. But because I did that, I told the guy, yes, we secured the deal, and I don't think we would have had it the next day.
Really?
When you have a good piece of property, and this is why I got so excited about this one. As soon as I saw the address, I was like, oh, this is in a prime Class A neighborhood of Seattle.
Yeah.
And then the price that was brought to me was really it was dirt pricing. Builders were paying that much for that lot, roughly, right there. Maybe a little bit less. And so I knew I had to rush out there right away. I knew the square footage, the price, the location. You can't wait on it.
Give me just a high level overview. We bought it for $825. How much do you think we're going to put into it, and what can we sell it for?
So we think we're going to be putting in about $250,000 into the renovation. So we're going to do a pretty high quality renovation. And in our Seattle market, that's typically what I pay for something if we're taking it to studs. Wiring, plumbing, framing, it's about $100 a foot for me on that size house. And I actually think we might be a little bit below that.
Bam.
So we have $250,000, and what that $250,000 is going to take the house from a 3-bedroom, 1-bath property into a 4-bedroom, 3-bath with a formal primary. In addition to, it's going to rebuild the entire garage. because the garage is caved in, it is busted, and it needs a brand new one. By doing this, the comps then jumped up to, when I sent you off those comparables, they were conservative too.
Yeah.
As flippers, this is a high risk business. You don't want to go for that outlier comp. Like, don't chase the star. Go for the cluster.
Oh, that's a good term. Did you make that up?
I think I just made that up right now.
I like that. Yeah. You want to stick to like what's been proven time and again. You don't want like, oh, there was this one amazing sale. You don't know what the context of that one sale was. But if it's a comp gets repeated several times, it gives you some more confidence.
Yes. And that's what we're looking for is patterns. What is the averages? And, so when we sent off the comparables, we had a range of them. They were anywhere between 1.4 for houses that were 800 square feet smaller, all the way up to 1.6.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little bit higher.
Yeah. This is when I got pretty excited about it because the first comp was a 4.2, a little bit bigger, 2,600 square feet, but sold for almost 1.6 in a similar neighborhood. We saw one at 1.4, 1.5. And this, I went over there and it's a really nice block, a really walkable neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Just seems like there's really good upside. So this got me very excited despite a little bit of sticker shock when you told me what we were going to have to pay for the acquisition cost.
It's amazing what you get for $1 million in Seattle nowadays. But what it comes down to, is there the margin? That's what I'm always looking at. Is there the return?
Within your buy box, is this what you consider a good deal, standard deal, thin deal?
This is, I would say, higher than average deal. So for my buy box as a flipper in Seattle, and it changes with the market. When the market's really hot, I will look at deals. If I can make a 30% return in 6 months, I will look at buying that deal.
Yeah.
And when the market's more normal, it's 35%. And when I'm a little worried about the market, it goes anywhere between 40 and 50% cash on cash returns. And so I don't really move numbers. I don't think about is it going to be worth less? Is it going to be worth more? I just go in with a smaller or bigger margin based on what I think the market's doing. Mm-hmm. And, that kind of trains me as an investor to go, okay, is this a buy or not? Is it worth the risk is always the question we're asking, because flipping is a very, very risky business.
That's actually one of the things that made me feel a little bit better about this deal, because I see some of the deals you do. James once posted on Instagram this video of him throwing a rock with his arm through the roof of a house he was about to buy. That's how dilapidated the house was. And that's the thing for me, as someone who doesn't have a lot of experience with construction. I've done BRRRRs, I've done rental renovations, but I haven't really done like a full house makeover. I was really worried about it. This is what has kept me out of flipping, but like this house, like what do you look for that makes you feel like this is lower risk or like worth that considerable investment and signals to you that this construction plan isn't going to be overly complicated or costly?
What makes a house good or not, or what makes it complicated? Does it have a foundation or not? That's really my biggest concern, because if I have to do structural foundation work, it takes time. It can be 6 to 9 months as you're waiting for permits.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at what's going to slow the project down. And so when I went out to look at that house for us, one of my concerns was it was an old house, nearly 100 years old. Do we have to reframe the entire structure? Because sometimes you're buying them, they're really bad layouts, and to maximize the value. So we pulled the comps, we looked at those. What do we need to create? I ran out there to go look at it. And what I was pleasantly surprised with, this is why I call it a 6 out of 10. There's a lot of good walls in spots they should already be.
Yeah, right. So you don't have to shift things around.
Not very much. We're going to open up some spaces, create a primary, and there's not a lot of structural framing in the house. And that is important for speed and cost.
Even when I went over there, and I don't have as much experience, you could tell like the bones and the layout were solid. Like you weren't going to have to do some crazy stuff in there. And that personally made me feel a lot better about this deal.
Yeah. And when you walked in the front door, it was straight. That's a big indicator for me. Is it sagging? Is it sinking? Mm-hmm. And the house actually has really good bones.
I love to hear it. That's great. All right, it is time for a break. But first, if you're enjoying this conversation, you may want to check out James's new book. It's called The House Flipping Framework. James, as you've heard, has flipped thousands of houses in his career. And this book is his tactical playbook for scaling your portfolio and reinvesting your profits. Even if you can't invest directly with James, like I'm doing, you can get almost all of the same insights by reading the House Flipping Framework, which is available at biggerpockets.com/houseflippingyt. We'll be right back. What if you could buy new construction homes up to $20,000 below market value? That's right, 20 grand in instant equity. But what if you could use that same 20 grand to cover your down payment or to score a lower mortgage rate? Talk about being spoiled for choices. Right now, Rent to Retirement is offering investors their choice of incentives when they invest in a new turnkey property. Your options? Up to 20 grand below retail pricing on new construction homes, which basically means you get instant equity. Or you can get 5% down payment credits. That means less cash out of your pocket. If you're tired of high rates, use that $20,000 to lower your interest rate to as low as 3.99% and score free property management for a year. Rent to Retirement's final option? How about a no money down investor loan? Take your choice of instant equity, low or no money down, or a rate as low as 3.99%. To learn more, visit renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com. Or just text REI to 33777. REI to 33777 to take advantage of these limited time incentives. All right, thanks for sticking with us. Let's jump back into this conversation about me and James flipping a house together. James and I will update everyone about this deal as we're sort of going through. We're going to make some YouTube videos about it. So we're not going to get too far into that much about the house itself right now. I want to talk about the partnership structure because I think this is something that's going to be really applicable to everyone here. But before we do, just what's the update? Where are we in the process right now?
Okay, so we closed on this property about a month ago, roughly.
Yes.
And right now we've had an architect go through, create our after plan. We've submitted that to the city for permits. We also did an asbestos test on the property because when we're taking that much out of the house, we want to make sure that we're not going to trigger some environmental. It did test hot. Dave, your first house is covered with asbestos.
Oh, I've done this for rentals. I'm used to the abatement. I know this game.
That usually will freak people out too. They're like, asbestos. And I'm like, just don't eat it and everything's fine.
It's scary, that stuff. If you look into it, I don't want to mess with that. You hire the pros. That's what I would do. But I understand people. It's very expensive.
It can be, but you got to price it right. So we got a we probably have the cheapest asbestos removal guys in the state doing our abatement.
Oh, nice.
And so because it tested hot, we had to do a 10-day notification to Clean Air. We had to wait 10 days and then they could start abating. So we did have, and this is the thing about these older houses with bigger margins, there's little hiccups that you don't expect, even with the asbestos delays and scheduling and engineering, because you're really dependent on that part just to get your site planned and prepped. And then we've had the roof quoted out. That's being installed this week. And the garage is going to start getting reconstructed before the permits rolled out for the house.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Starting next week.
And I think you said when we were talking the other day, you think from permits it will be 4 months to completion, right?
Yeah, 4 months, and that's an aggressive schedule, but we have a general that has loosened up a lot of work. He doesn't have a lot of workflow, so typically it would take him 5.5 months, and 4 months is going to be the goal. And that's something I will talk to you about once we are locked into a date, because I also like to throw bonuses at the contractor if they hit that day.
For sure. I do want to turn to sort of the partnership side of this, because like I said, I've sort of never thought I would participate in a flip in any way. And then I realized sort of through this game we were playing on the market and just like being in this industry long enough, realized that like there is a role for passive investors in flipping. For certain people, not all operators want to do this, but you created a structure that was sort of like a really good win-win opportunity, I felt, for both of us. And I think would be really helpful for you to explain it to the audience, because there are probably, I'm guessing there are other people sort of like me who are more passive rental property investors who would be interested in investing in a flip if the right partnership came around. So tell everyone a little bit about how you structured our deal.
We bring on partners to give us more purchasing power.
Yeah.
Because we have the teams, we can execute the plan. there's no reason for us not to go buy the deal. Typically, when we do this, there's two ways that we raise capital, and most flippers do it this way as well. Is you're either going to raise it with debt, where you're going to be taking on a hard money loan and then maybe a secondary private money investor loan, or even a private investor for the whole thing, and they will give you high leverage where you can get your entire deal funded with leverage for the most part.
Yep.
And that's going to cost you usually rates, anywhere between 10 and 15%, 2 points, depending how much leverage it is. But then as the operator, I'm stuck paying debt that whole time.
Yep.
And this is a game of cash flow too, because when you have 30, 40 projects going on at a time, I think our average monthly payment for hard money right now is probably like, we probably pay $250,000 a month.
Wow.
In interest payments.
250, damn.
And so we have to pay attention to that. That's a wave, right? And so when you bring in a partner, so instead of bringing in debt, a lot of times bringing in an equity partner. This is where you're not going to be paying them interest or points, and you can bring in a partner. And in our partnership, I'm responsible for sourcing the deal, running the project, taking it through the execution, being the operator, and your job is to wire me the money that we need.
Yep.
And it works out really well because we don't have to worry about cash flow because our investor is the person bringing in the capital. The negative thing is, as an operator, we're paying out more.
You're giving up upside.
We're giving up upside, and also the cash on cash returns that we get on our flips are a lot higher than what we can borrow money for at 10 to 12%.
Right. Yeah, because you could leverage it more and earn a higher cash on cash return.
Yes.
But I guess the counter side is that when you take on a partner like me, you are taking less risk, because when you take on debt, right, if the deal goes sideways, the bank eats first. And so the equity partner gets, you would get left holding the bag. Whereas this time, if something went bad, we would split the downside and it would probably hurt less, right?
Correct. So that, Dave, we've done some lending stuff together too.
Yeah.
And, you make 10 to 12% on the money. And that's a guarantee with a personal guarantee behind that. So whatever happens on that project, you are getting paid your rate and your points. With equity, like you said, if the deal goes bad, the return can go down or go into the red. And so that's why there's more profit in the beginning. Like on this deal, when I sent you over, we looked at the comps, we looked at the purchase price, we looked at the budget. When we were looking at the return, it's a high return. It's like 60% in there. And a 60% return is a lot more than 12 to borrow. But you're also taking on a risk. If we hit, let's say the market crashes tomorrow, you're going to be in the red too.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's why there's that upside. And as an operator, balancing your partners is actually really key, because you don't want to be all in leverage and be paying those payments all the time. You want to kind of balance it out. And then for us too, because we do a lot of projects, we like to have long-term partners and have them in multiple different types of revenue streams so they do well in the long run.
That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, from my perspective, it's great. Like, I understand that this type of deal is risky for me. It also has great upside. But for you, doing as many deals as you want, I can see why you wouldn't want to do all max leverage. That's really risky. And you wouldn't want to do all equity partnerships because you'd be giving up a lot of upside. So coming up with a blend of financing options and different approaches to financing your deals makes a lot of sense to you. We got to pause for some ads, but stick with us, because after the break, we'll talk about how almost anyone listening can replicate this partnership that James and I have formed and learn how to flip firsthand. We're back. Here's the rest of my conversation with James Dainard. We could talk maybe at length. It's probably a whole other show about how someone like me should vet an operator. Obviously, this is a unique situation. You and I know each other. And so I trust you. But I think the other side of this is less talked about and maybe even more interesting to some of our audience, which is like, what do you look for in a partner? Because you have done a million deals. You can probably, you have banks that you can use. Like, what is the ideal equity partner for you? Because I would imagine there are other people like me who want to invest passively in these types of high upside value add projects, but don't really know how to structure and strike a partnership with an operator.
In the Pacific Northwest, we run 8 different businesses, and they take a lot of time in management. And the thing that I've learned in our 20 years of doing this is too many cooks in the kitchen is a bad thing. Too many opinions on a deal is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't take money from everybody. We actually turn it down pretty regularly. It's a matter of we have to have the right partner, and the partner needs to be of like mind. They need to also understand risk. We do not sell fairy tales. Like, I mean, Dave, me and you have talked about, like, yeah, everything can go bad. You could lose all your money.
Yeah, I know that. Part of the game.
And that's important in this agreement and partnership.
Yeah.
Like, I would say never take money from someone that doesn't fully understand what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
And so we don't want someone in the background trying to, talk to my team regularly. They can get updates, but they cannot direct. And if they ever have a question, say, hey, I'd just like to know about this to learn. Oh, by all means, I'll sit there and chat with them all day long about it. But at the end of the day, it's my plan.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to do my plan, that's okay. They can do their own plan. And so that's important because it's not because I just think I know everything. It's because it provides clarity to everybody working on the job site. When there's more people involved, the telephone game happens and mistakes happen.
Yeah. And everyone has to have a different job, whether it's a flipper or business, right? Like you should specialize in what you're good at. My specialty here is just wiring you money and then never directing anything, just asking questions about what to learn. The way I think about it is like you're sort of going on a ride. I don't know. Have you ever been skydiving, like with like a tandem person?
No, I was supposed to go 4 times in a row and got canceled for weather 4 times in a row.
Oh my God.
And then I took that as a sign that I should not be going.
Just not do it. Okay. Well, it's like the reason I always think about it this way, because like you're going and unless you have your license, you basically just get strapped to the instructor and they jump out and they do everything. And you're just basically saying, like, I'm trusting this person with my life, their experience. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to go along for the ride. And like, obviously real estate has different risk and reward than skydiving, but it's kind of the same thing where it's just like, you have to put your trust in this person and what will be, will be. You being like wanting to know every detail or put your opinion is not going to help the situation. And so you have to recognize that in this type of deal, you are passive, you are quiet, you are silent, you are backing an operator that you believe in, and then you got to let them do their job. You can't sort of try and micromanage these situations.
No, it just gets, like I've invested with Kara Beckman, that on some projects. And she's like, wow, you're the easiest partner. I'm like, cool, because I'm the operator usually. And she's like, well, don't you have an opinion? I'm like, I have an opinion, but you're in charge. If you want my opinion, call me and ask for it and I'll give it to you. But I was like, whatever you think we need to do, let's just do it. But I do want to know if you're going over budget, we're going over timeline.
Yep.
And why? Because as an investor, like Dave, I may not want you to participate, but you still need reporting. You still need progress updates. And that's clarity is so important in any real estate partnership. And especially when you're dealing with operators and funding.
Yep.
And picking the right people who you partner with is essential.
Totally. Yeah, the way I sort of think about it is when you invest passively, whether this particular deal or when I invest in like a fund or in a syndication, you're agreeing with the operator to a business plan. Like there's a lot of conversation up front about like, here's the structure of the deal, here's the asset that we're buying, here is the thing that we're trying to accomplish from this deal. And after the agreement is made, what I want to know is like, are we on track or are there deviations to that agreement? And if everything's on track, I don't really care.
You have to trust your partner. Like me and Will, my business partner, he runs his set of books, I run my set of books, and we fully trust each other that we're doing the right thing. And if you don't have that trust, don't do the partnership. Mm-hmm. You always have to have trust. You always have to have clarity. And that's why the documents are also so important, because it does outline everybody's responsibility when you're putting together these partnerships. Like when we decided to partner on this house, I had already closed on the house. So I funded it. You filled in with the partnership. And then we did that through a joint venture agreement. And the joint venture agreement is the contract, and it's how it protects me as the operator, protects you as the investor. And it spells out the thing about a joint venture agreement is you can go as detailed as you want. Who is doing what and who is responsible for what? And then where is the accountability? Like in a joint venture agreement, you could write in that you could ask accounting for a forensic audit every week if you wanted.
Yeah. And you would have never taken my money if I asked for that.
No, I'll be like, I'm gonna send you my accounting bill too. It's
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's why it's so important with the clarity. Like, because you can know the people really well and the deal can still go really bad.
Of course.
I mean, I've done some deals with buddies and I don't blame them. It's just
Yeah.
the deal went bad.
Yeah.
That's hard, right? Because you're trusting that process, you're trusting the market. But the clarity in the paperwork, that's why you always have to don't jerry rig the thing. Like you
Yeah.
have to have the right paperwork because that's what's protecting your money.
Yeah. I mean, even if deals go well, you need to know, you need to have that, right? Like you need to have everything laid out on every one of these partnerships. And, luckily for me in this deal, like you have a structure that works for you. And I was happy to sort of slot into, but I've done other partnerships, and that is the work in my opinion, is like making sure that everyone has not just mutual agreement, but incentive alignment, that like we both win when there's upside and we both lose, like sort of at a proportionate rate if there's a downside. And that way, no matter what happens, win or lose, like everyone feels like they're treated fairly, and that they got a fair shake. And like, that's how I feel this structure works for me. Even if the deal goes poorly, I feel like we're both taking on an appropriate amount of risk to earn a potential for an appropriate amount of a reward.
We don't look at per deals. We look at people as long-term partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, we're okay doing that because we're also making a return. And, and that is the benefit of an operator when bringing in equity. You don't have as much risk in the deal. Mm-hmm. Because I see a lot of investors, they rush in and like, I just partnered with this person. And I'm like, oh, cool. How'd you meet him? I just met him at a meetup group. What deal did you buy? I don't know.
Yeah.
They had good numbers. I was like, what? So where did you look at the number? And then I get curious, like, how did you vet the numbers? And they're like, oh, well, he's just done this a lot. And I'm like, oh no, like and maybe they have, but you have to understand what you're sending money on.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's scary because numbers, I mean, investing is about assumptions, right? It's like the calculations are easy. It's about what you assume is going to happen. And you could be way off on that and you can make your assumptions look great, but they could be completely wrong.
Yeah, and that's getting to know your operator before you fund them. Like, how do they look at investments? I mean, you have talked to a lot of operators in your career. I know that. Some, they like to put some juice in their pro forma.
Yes.
And you look at like 3 deals from them, you're like, yeah, the numbers are, everything's at the best case scenario.
I like the pessimistic people. I want to hear people who are like, this probably won't go well.
And as an operator, for me, I like to be pessimistic because it's easy to under promise and over deliver. That's right. The easiest conversation you can have.
Yeah.
When you over promise and under deliver, it sucks the life out of you too, as the operator.
Oh yeah.
And it is not worth it. And so like all these operators out there, be conservative. If you're conservative, you're protecting your investor. And I'd rather go to you, Dave, and go, hey, look, I got this deal and you can make 16% on it. It's a quick deal. It's easy. There's lots of upside. Because like our flip-off house in Kent, it doubled. Like, and I knew I was being a little conservative, but not that conservative.
Yeah.
And as long as you do that, it makes everybody's lives easier and you prevent issues and you prevent legal issues as well.
Personally, this is how I operate my investing business, regardless of whether it's a partnership or not. I always want to look at the worst, like not the worst case scenario, not like a 2008 scenario, but I underwrite for low growth, lowest possible outcome. And usually I'm wrong and something better happens. Like the flip house, the game house that we invested in, that's a good example. Like you set my expectations lower than you thought. And then I was delighted. I do the same thing when I underwrite a rental property, right? Like I underwrite for low growth, for high expenses, for low appreciation, for low rent growth. And I'm usually wrong on the upside, right? Like there's usually more upside in a deal than the way I underwrite it. But I like only executing deals where if things go like pretty badly, I'm still comfortable with the deal.
Yeah. And then it's like, how do you find that on your operator? And so that's where you can ask those questions. Like if an investor that we're talking about doing a deal and they want to ask me like, hey, you're projecting this to take 7 months, 8 months. Can you show me the last 5 deals similar and how long they took?
And what if they say no? Or I think they probably wouldn't say no, but how would you evaluate their response? Like what would a good response look to you for that? Like what kind of documentation, what kind of evidence should they bring to you?
Well, and that on the operator side, if they're asking me for a million things about that, I'm going to be like, okay, you don't trust me at all. But I mean, if someone can show me on a tax record when they bought it, when they sold it, typically as I get to know an operator too, or I'm even getting to know an investor, I'm trying to set those expectations. I send them over pictures of what we do as well. Like here's an example house, because I want them to know too, like what is our talents, what is our skill sets, because everybody flips properties different depending on the market. There's some houses that the way they do it in a different part of the country, that we can't do that in Seattle.
Right.
And the way we do it in Seattle won't make any money in those other parts of the country.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique place.
And so asking for those things, there's nothing wrong with asking for proof. And if an operator won't give that to you, that's a red flag. But the same red flag is if you're going, hey, thanks for those dates. Can you send me your P&Ls? Can you send me every invoice you spent?
Yeah.
Like, if you're getting too deep on me, I just don't want to deal with it. It's not that I won't show my books. It's just like, I don't have time to answer this many questions all day long. We got things to do.
But to your point, like when you were starting out, you would have done that.
For sure, because when we're new, and we all start from the same place, right? Like I got in this business as a wholesaler, less than 15 grand in my bank, didn't know what I was doing, but I wanted to learn, right? And so I was willing to give away a lot just to learn and and that was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would have done whatever it took to get that money. And when I invest with people, I always let them know the vetting process is the most gnarly. After that, they won't hear from me much.
Yeah, exactly.
And because you really have to see, because people can say a story, but you got to know the story.
Right.
And, if it's a newer operator and they're on project number 6, maybe even project number 1, I don't want a budget. I want a construction bid. I want to know what the actual costs are that are going in this house, because they don't have the experience to kind of narrow that cost down. Whereas at our company, as we've done this for a long time, we make the bid, give it to our contractors and negotiate. And we make that bid based on the pricing we know that they'll do it for.
Oh, that's such a flex to be able to be like, I know what this costs. I'm going to give you your own bid.
Well, that was that budget we sent off to you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I think you have to verify those numbers, right? Like, I know you don't vet my deals probably as thoroughly as maybe someone, but you love looking at the numbers.
Oh, it's the best.
And as a passive investor, the more you understand those numbers, you have to see what's the brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Budget of 250 is, well, what's going into it? What if that operator's spending 250, but they're not even adding a bathroom?
Right, exactly.
And so you have to know what they're doing and not doing. And that's the cool thing about what you're going to do on this project right now is the more you know, the more returns you're going to be making, because you know who to invest with and not to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm way far behind, but I'm so impressed by your ability to just like name off what anything should cost. You're like, oh, like like adding a bathroom should cost this amount. A new kitchen, X amount per square foot. That doesn't come easily. I'm so impressed that you could do it, but I want to get at least closer. Like that's one of my main goals for this is to really just be able to sort of benchmark expenses for construction and get better at that, because it allows you to vet deals, vet operate it so much better. Even if you're not doing it yourself, you have to have at least like a little bit of a baseline here. And that's what I'm hoping to learn from you on this project.
Yeah, I mean, the construction is the brick and mortar to all this. Lending, partnerships, that's the component that tells it whether it's going to be profitable or not.
Well, I could talk to you about this all day, but we are meeting up on Monday to talk about this more. So I think we should get out of here, but this was a great conversation. Thank you for including me on this deal. I'm super excited about it. I'm going to learn a lot, and we'll take you all along for this ride, because I imagine that there are a lot of people out there, like I said, like me, who don't necessarily have the construction chops or the time to run a flip, but are eager to get in and have a chance at some of the huge upside that is available from these value add projects. So we'll take you along for the ride. And James, thanks for being the teacher on this one.
I better look good. So that's extra pressure for you. We got to hit this deal right, or this is not going to be good for me.
Yeah, it's a good thing we're recording this before we know what happens. So it puts a little bit of pressure on both of us to make this thing happen. But I have full confidence, and either way, we'll learn something.
Yeah. All right. Let's go walk this site.
All right. Well, we'll put that up on YouTube. So make sure to check that out if you're curious about this house. And that's what we got for you today. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon for another episode of the BiggerPockets podcast.